As part of the Clear-Sighted Career Online Learning Series, we welcome you to today's webinar. It's titled Career Transitions, How to Survive and Thrive. If you're in a career transition or anticipate one, this program is for you. My name is Sharon Kane. I serve as Director of Professional and Academic Programs in Notre Dame's Alumni Association. And I'm joined today by my colleagues, Annie Duffy, who serves as our Career Advisor, and Bob Plain, who is our Career Coach. Bob will focus on career transitions, which have become more commonplace. He'll give us the landscape today and why career transitions are more prevalent. Bob will provide some insights into how to recognize if a transition is upon you, and we'll also share a 5-step career transition plan, as well as recommended resources. As we get started, please submit your questions at any time using the prompts in the Q&A question comment section that appears on your screen. If for some reason we're unable to address your question as part of the webinar, we will respond to you offline. In order to facilitate that, if you would, please be sure to include your email address along with your question. And just a reminder that this webinar is being recorded. Will be posted to the My Notre Dame website under Connect and in the Multimedia Resources section. Now, I'd like to introduce Bob Plain, our expert on career transition. Bob's a Notre Dame graduate himself, a member of the class of 1969. He's a board-certified coach specializing in job search and career assistance. For the last 5+ years, he supported Notre Dame alumni. In his coaching practice, Bob draws upon his diverse professional background as an executive, an entrepreneur, an educator, an author. His one-on-one work with individuals who are experiencing transitions in their career and his own career transition qualify him to support us today on this topic. Bob has written an easy-to-read book for job seekers titled Like Jam on Toast, Tips for Making Your Job Search Efficient and Effective. Bob, on behalf of everyone, thank you for sharing your professional experience and expertise on career transitions with us today.
Thanks very much, Sharon. It's great to be with you all today. It's really a pleasure and a privilege. This is a fantastic and a very timely topic and a real favorite of mine from a coaching standpoint, but it's hardly a favorite of people that are immersed in it. So let's dive right in. These are the topics that we're going to go over today. We're going to spend a little bit of time just looking at the reality of career transitions, why they're so prevalent, what are some of the causes. We want to spend a bulk of our time walking through a 5-step career transition plan that I think will help take some of the anxiety out of the whole process. There are some very good resources that we want to make sure that you're aware of and know how to tap into and use. There are a couple of really good inspirational stories that I think will help you see the light in this process and how other people have made it successfully through and on to new and better things. We'll wrap up with a little bit of summary, and I want to remind you again that we're really looking forward to your questions, and I know there are going to be some out there, and that's an important part of this type of webinar. So here we go. First thing, I always like to remind people in coaching is that your career is truly a work in progress. It takes your attention, I think, almost every day. You have a need to stay current in your field, know what's going on, know what the requirements are, what new skills you need to have. Technology is all around us, and we always need to be aware of how it's impacting our career. Another important thing is to be mindful of the pluses and minuses in your career. Where do you stand? What are you up on? What are you lacking? What do you need to do next Be aware to test yourself a little bit in the market and with some of your contacts and mentors and other people. And be prepared. Make sure you're up to date with your contacts. Keep your information fresh, and that means your resume, your LinkedIn profile, and other media that you might be using, and be aware and prepared in the market. It really helps. So with that as a kind of prelude, here we go on career transitions. This is the reality. There's a lot of research out there that shows that people are changing careers much more frequently than ever before. If there are two things about today's job market that really stand out to me, it's this issue that people are changing positions more frequently than ever before, about every 4 years, and chances are really good that you'll experience a transition from your career to another career. And a lot of the research shows that this is anywhere from 2 to 5 times in a working life. Now, some of that means that the changes are enhanced by things that are going on in the marketplace, and we'll talk about that a little bit. Some of this is forced upon us. Some of it comes as a result of things that are stirring within us, but again, chances are very good that you will experience one. This career transition episode, it's not critical, it's not life-threatening, but it's more than the flu. It's something that you have to pay attention to and be ready for, and when it is upon you, I think know how to really deal with it effectively. So let's take a look. First, let's look at some of the things that really are symptoms, causes of this career transition event that comes upon us. First of all, the pace of change in our job market and in our world is really astonishing. Technology has changed almost everything. We truly live in a global marketplace. Companies are going in and out of markets at a very rapid pace. The company's quotient of change is kind of mind-boggling. They're dropping things and moving into new things very rapidly. There are also a number of occupations that have become obsolete. In the past, we thought of purchasing, and now we think of procurement. If at one time we were involved in inventory control or material handling, it's now much more likely that we're a part of the wider world of logistics. There are some other things that are obsolete or have changed dramatically in the quality area, in the administration area, and we can think of a lot more. Many times the cause of a career transition is due to limited opportunity, that we've kind of reached the peak of what we think we can do in our current career, and we desire more in terms of experience, responsibility, compensation, and other things. There's also the issue that sometimes we find ourselves being severely underemployed, and being underemployed is a real issue in the marketplace as people try to find their place and make their way or make ends meet for some period of time, and they know that that's not their real career endeavor. The last cause that I have here is a leading, something that was undone, something that you thought about, something that you wanted to pursue, and for a variety of reasons, whether they were personal or family or financial, you had to leave undone, and they remain with you. Now, how can you recognize that some of this is upon you? Well, there are some very good symptoms. Some of it shows up in low energy. We just don't seem to have the vim and the vigor that we once had for what we were doing. Whereas our motivation in the past might have been high, now we really have to struggle to be motivated, or we find that we have a real lack of motivation. I find in many instances that poor performance is a symptom of a career change. It's hard to well up to really be invested in things that we really don't see as our clear future. And a lot of times this shows up in poor performance, either sporadically or in a pattern. And I think we have to recognize this. Acute curiosity, we keep thinking about what if. What if we were doing this? Sometimes the acute curiosity is devoted to being mindful and very, very curious about what other people are doing and how can they do it and why can't we and why aren't we. So these are some of the causes, and I think a lot of people recognize these at different times in their career and in different patterns. I think you have to pay attention to them. So now let's venture into what we determine here is a 5-step career transition plan designed to help you lead yourself through this. The first is an issue of just anticipating, reading your environment. Do you notice any of those symptoms that we talked about? Can you identify in your environment that you are either less engaged or having some performance issues? Anticipate what the external forces are at work. Are changes going on in your industry or in your area that are making it very difficult? How has technology changed things? Where is your particular marketplace going? And then what internal dynamics are at play? And by internal dynamics, I mean the things really close to you. Where is your motivation? Where is your curiosity factor? In your world, in your work world, how do you seem to be fitting in? Are you keeping up with peers? Are you noticing that peers are doing different things than you're doing? So I think you really have to read those factors and anticipate those types of things. After that, I think you move into this area that we call explore. And this is very important because this is where you really start to do work on your career transition plan. I think it is important to remember that options exist. Remember that these changes in the industry are going on around you. You're not alone in this. Many people are going through these career transitions. Job changes, industry changes are out there. There's additional education and training available to you, so there are options. I'm really a big proponent of this second factor here. When you're in the explore stage, be curious. Let your curiosity go a little bit. Be curious about asking other people what they do. If you know someone that seems to enjoy things in a way that you'd like to enjoy things, or in a field that you think you might enjoy, be curious. Ask questions. Go read job postings, job announcements. See what's out there. Try to see yourself in some of those postings. Can you imagine it? Do you think you have what it takes to do that? Read a lot. I'm a fan of utilizing assessments. There are some very good assessments out there for people at different stages of their career that can tell them things about where their interests lie based upon the assessment data. A couple of these assessments also permit you to drill down from just interest areas to industries, and from industries to job titles, and from job titles to some job data. We'll talk in the resources about some of my favorites just to kind of pass them on to you right now. I think the three that I really like are the ONET Interest Profiler, which is available through many state departments of labor and unemployment offices. The Strong Campbell Interest Inventory has been around for a while. It's a very tried and true career assessment. Both of these two follow that formula that I spoke about starting off with interest areas and then showing you industries, and within the industries actually some job titles. I think that's important. Bridge My Career, which is available through the Alumni Association, also can be a very good assessment tool when you're trying to find out the direction of your career. In the explore stage, you have to seek input from advisors and mentors, people that know you. Try things on them. Ask them some what-if questions. Don't be shy. This goes back to being curious. You've got to use your network. Seek resources. There's a lot out there. Coaching, counseling are really good things to seek, I think, in career transition. There are people that can really be helpful and help you make your way through this process. When you're exploring, I think it's important that you really understand your interests and desires. This takes a little bit of real inward work to try to test yourself, to make sure that you really understand and appreciate those interests and desires that you are thinking about. The last part of this is that the exploration phase should lead you to identify some, I put it in quotes, good options. Not necessarily the option you will choose, but some good options should come out of your exploration. And I think this is tied to the work that you have done about being curious, using assessments, seeking input from people, using your network, and really trying to understand and test those interests and desires that you have thought about. When we've come this far, now we get into a little bit of the action, things that can really move us through this career transition. And in these, there is a amount of an assessing that we need to do. I believe one of the first things to do when we've identified some of our good options is to take a look at how qualified am I for my next professional opportunity? And what do I need to do to be a qualified candidate? I believe that in today's employer-driven job market, there is a focus on skill, expertise, experience, and education. And employers have the upper hand, and they can call out specific things that they are looking for, and that's the way they rate candidates. To be successful in the job market, one needs to figure out if they are a qualified candidate. The same thing when you're looking at a new career in this transition plan, you need to ask yourself the question of how qualified am I, and what do I need to do? Are there additional things that I need to do? There's a very difficult task here about looking at this new field or opportunity and seeing if it meets your individual criteria for work, the subject of what you're going to be doing, for the environment that you want to be in. The location sometimes can be very important. Compensation is an issue for every step in the career plan, and what amount of risk are you willing to take? I think those are the things that one needs to always be mindful of when they are seeking a position, and especially when they are stepping out into a new career path. At this point, we can test our option a number of different ways. Probably the best way to start is by turning to your contacts for feedback. I'm entering a phase where I think I want to go in this direction. I want to move from working in the media field to becoming more intentional about working in the training field. What is your feeling about that? Turning to your contacts can be very important, not only from getting their feedback, but also by informing them of where you are and what you're planning to do. Conducting informational interviews makes a lot of sense here. In the new area, get to know some people, go and search them out, ask them questions. Use this as a way of gauging your fit in this new field. You have to evaluate this choice and think about the risk versus the reward. Sometimes this is a moot point, especially if you are in a field where either the market or the position, the field that you're in is really just changing dramatically or even going away. But if it's a subtle change, then you do need to do this risk versus reward test to make sure that you're okay. This is the place where I think you get to sit back and think in project terms. Project management is very important in our job world today, so I think of this as a go, no-go point. Am I ready? Is everything in place? And do I make the decision to go or perhaps pull back and do some more work? If we've come this far, we're ready to act. This is the place we really want to get to in this process. We want to try to get it behind us and have that direction that we can move forward. So when we've made the choice and we've tested our option, it's now time to prepare. And I think the things you need to prepare first is a script. You have to be able to tell people very succinctly and very pointedly what your plan is. I think this script should talk about where you have been, what you have accomplished, and more importantly, where you plan to go. When you're thinking about this script, I think it's important to think of that the first part of it, where you have been, should be about 30% or so of what you're talking about. And 70% of your script should be about where you would like to go or where you plan to go and why. And it needs to be compelling. I think this is something that we don't often pay enough attention to. It's really a way of preparing ourselves and then helping to prepare others to know where we are headed. We have to revise our materials to indicate this step that we want to take. These materials are probably our resume. We need a resume now that's much more forward-oriented and not so historical. This might mean a change from a chronological type resume to more of a functional type resume. And in any case, it will need a good opening to alert people of our new direction. I think LinkedIn has very quickly become the living resume, so we need to make sure that our LinkedIn profile material is in sync with our resume and that we're prepared to make new contacts and things using it in LinkedIn. Any letters or standard emails or things that we use, I think we should have a way of knowing that they are ready and in sync with our new career path. At this point, we can enter job search mode, start to fill the funnel that's involved in all the things that we need to do to make our job search successful. Two very important notes I really want to bring up to you here. Planning and conducting a job search while you are in transition is extremely challenging. Both are demanding. I'm a proponent that really the best time to undergo career transition work is while you are currently employed. When you try to do both a career transition and a job search, you're really pushing yourself to the limit. So wherever you can, undergo a career transition while you are currently employed. Here's some resources that I like to talk about. Use a journal, just a little pad, a little notebook. Great place for you to write down questions. Plenty of them will come to you in this process. It's a good place to be able to go back and look for themes and open-ended questions that you might want to consider. We mentioned assessments. I'll go over again. Bridge My Career through the Alumni Association is a great one. The ONET Interest Profiler is available through many state departments of labor and employment security offices. Strong Campbell Interest Inventory you can access over the web. Both the ONET and Strong Campbell give you that ability to drill down. I'm a reader. I like to recommend some reading. Two that I think are great in the career transition process are What Should I Do With My Life by a pretty prolific writer out on the West Coast, Poe Bronson. What I like about his book is that he writes in stories. He tells other people's stories. They can be very informative and inspirational. You can pick it up and read a few. You don't have to kind of plow through the whole book. There's lots of books written out there about career change. One of my favorites is Strategies for Successful Career Change by Martha Mangelsdorf. But if you were to do a search, I'm sure you'd find some. You'd find many. You might want to start with this one. And really remember that the Notre Dame Alumni Association offers a great many services that are available and very helpful to you in a career transition. Resume work, connection with other alumni, coaching services, assessment services are all very, very valuable to you. So here's summary. Don't panic. Don't make quick decisions. Be curious. Got to ask a lot of questions. This takes an amount of resiliency, patience, and being very resourceful. We've outlined a career transition plan. I think that's one of the resources you should really focus on. Seek and use resources. I think this follows along with being curious, using your mentors, your contacts, a coach if you have one, the resources of the Alumni Association. And again, I think this issue of following a plan should be very, very high on your list. I want to close here with a couple just inspirational stories that tell you this really, really can be done, and people do really see a good new day. Here's an example of a client, very successful in a Big Four consulting firm, and that certainly would have been a great highlight of hers, and it was. Unfortunately, a snowboarding accident and jogging in the park provided some inspiration, that curious factor, and led this person away from a career in Big Four consulting to starting a business in the yoga field where she is enjoying great success. Sometimes the changes are not quite that dramatic. Another client's story is something about not quite enjoying the job, a little bit of unrest going on. And sometimes there can be this tendency to drop everything and run in the opposite direction. But in this person's instance, it was more deft, more closer at hand. It took her a while to see it, and she managed to transition from being in the classroom to training teachers to be in the classroom. And both of these people have moved on to really great new areas. So let's get to some questions.
All right. So David asks, how much weight do you put on an aptitude testing as a means of determining an appropriate direction for a career change?
Well, if by aptitude testing you're referring to assessments, I'm a great believer that assessments in the career transition process are a very worthwhile, sometimes even a necessary piece. Things such as the ONET profiler is available many times without charge. It doesn't take all that long to take. It can be interpreted on your own. I think it's just an invaluable tool. I recommend to almost everyone that they try to use it.
Great. Kathleen's interested in knowing any special tips, resources, or books directed to women returning to the workforce after raising children.
Well, that's one of the great career transitions that we have seen certainly in my working life and in my coaching time. And there are bunches of them out there. The one that I mentioned from Mangelsdorf touches on it briefly, but there are a bunch of them, out there. One doesn't exactly come to me, but I think this is in the curious factor. Be curious, go talk to other people that have done it, and pay great attention to the resources that are available to you in and around, and especially in the counseling field.
I would just add to that, Kathleen and others, that there's an organization on the web at iRelaunch, that's one word, IRELAUNCH.com. And this is an organization that specializes in relaunching careers for individuals who are returning to work. And there are conferences, there are online, in-person conferences, online materials that you could explore. I'm going to take one more question, given the time. Terry wants to know, should you limit your good options if focus is an issue?
Well, depending upon where you are in the career transition process, I don't think you should limit. I think you ought to start out, especially if you're unclear where to go next, kind of let your mind wander. It's part of the be curious. I think then you have to try to narrow those choices down by a couple of things. One is, what will it take for you to be a qualified candidate in that new field? And how does it measure up to what you're looking for in terms of work content, the environment, the location, who your peers might be, what is the compensation, and what is the risk? So I think that's the way you narrow those options down. It's a process.
Definitely. And thank you to Margaret. She's reminding me to, of course, mention the ND Women Connect to you, Kathleen, and others. This is the Notre Dame alumni who are doing Forces for Good all across the country, a variety of chapters and activities with LinkedIn present, so please plug into that. So thank you for the questions, and if we didn't connect with you and answer your question, we will offline. I want to thank you all for joining us today as we focus on career transitions. I certainly want to thank Bob and Annie for their efforts in developing and delivering today's webinar. The recording will be posted at my.nd.edu. You can look under Connect and on the Multimedia Resources page. That will be available shortly. And to echo Bob, we encourage you to utilize the resources that we have available to you through the Notre Dame Alumni Association, the Career and Professional Services team. Our next webinar in the Clear-Sighted Career Series is Kicking Off Your Job Search, Strategies for a Great Game Plan, and that will be held Thursday, October 23rd from noon until 12:30 Eastern. So thank you again very much for all your participation today.